Definitely some good indicators in terms of employment. Some sectors where we are seeing some upticks in terms of the um, economic, well, in terms of labor and improvements in the unemployment rate. One could potentially look at the agricultural sector. There seems to be some higher labor involvement in that sector compared to the same quarter back in 2020. Sorry, it's actually in comparison to the third quarter. So it appears that that seems to have gone up. Roughly 9.4% of the population apparently is involved in the agricultural sector. Wholesale and retail, that seems to be a smaller proportion of the total um, well, participation. That went down a little bit, but sectors that seem to be growing include that of the accommodation and food services sector that has ticked upwards, as well education, administration and support services. And we can perhaps understand the context of that as well, even things like um, matters like public administration and defense. On Friday, for example, I think somewhere around, was it about 60, I think 64 persons were completing a 4-week training program, so that there are additional 64 special police constables which are joining the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. So congratulations to them. And of course, to trying to boost the numbers within the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. You may recall back in December, we saw about 78 new police officers coming into the force. And now another 64 special police constables being brought in. And I think there were an additional 50, is it 54 or 56? No, 56, sorry. 56 others who were also joining to become rangers. And of course, we've seen, especially in terms of the tourism sector and patrolling the tourism hotspots, the beaches, and some of the other areas that visitors go to, and the town of Soufrière and whatnot. So they, in fact, are another 56 individuals who are currently in training for that sector, which, of course, is really important in terms of dealing with the situation of crime. We do know that it's not just about manpower, but certainly manpower is a really important aspect. And if you don't have enough boots on the ground, you can certainly be challenged. And that has been a major constraint of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. So we're seeing certainly in that sector some growth. And I think, according to what was said by the Minister for National Security, the Prime Minister, last week, Friday, was that there's actually also going to be an additional, I think, is it 80 or so recruits who are also going to start training by next month. So you're going to effectively see a boosting of the manpower of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. Perhaps maybe some of those jobs are impacting on our labor force numbers as well. I'm not sure if those things would necessarily have been captured in the fourth quarter data, but it stands to reason, of course, perhaps maybe the first quarter data might even be better. During the first quarter of the year, you tend to have quite a lot of economic activity, and that is as a result of the cruise season being in full swing. And so a number of people end up being brought in as tour guides and to support work that's going on in the tourist sector. So that certainly, and of course, this is also the peak season for stayover arrivals as well. So you can see, of course, certainly some pressure being placed on the demand for labor within the St. Lucian context, which is actually a good position to be in. I think most countries want to be in a situation where they actually have a surplus of jobs than as opposed to a situation where you have very high unemployment. And so, undoubtedly, it's also a very good time for economic activity. So, suggesting that there is a buoyancy in the area of economic activity, and we are seeing the commencement of, for example, a number of hotel projects in the north of the island, and based on the pipeline of what seems to be coming there, looks like even more in that, which would of course boost in the first instance, the construction and transport sectors, which of course have to feed into the development of these properties and professional services. But of course, later on, the need for additional labor to, in fact, operate these facilities. So certainly suggesting good things, hopefully, for the St. Lucia economy. Also, last week, there was actually finally a breath of fresh air in the case of the city center. And that came with the opening of what is being called the Anchorage on the Waterfront. That project has been long in coming, and it was envisaged quite a long time ago as part of the OECS Tourism Competitiveness Project. And that was actually a World Bank funded project, which had been negotiated during the Kenya Anthony administration. Finally got approved, I think, after a change of government, and that project started off. It seemed to have languished somewhat in terms of the implementation, and there were a number of initiatives that were meant to have happened under that regime, and it was targeted principally at trying to improve the city of Castries, believe it or not. And so elements like studies were done on the proposals for the pedestrianization of the William Peter Boulevard, something we've been hearing about for quite some time. There were other studies looking at the traffic situation in the city of Castries, which still, of course, remains a ticklish and significant problem. And a number of other interventions were being proposed, things that would have expanded economic opportunities for persons through vending and retail, geared towards the tourism sector. Things like the Mon Lay-by, for example, I think is currently being done in that project and is nearing completion. But in the downtown area, one of the initiatives that was brought forward was originally was supposed to be the use of containers, shipping containers, modified to become what was called a box park. Now we kind of have a bit of a box park up north in the Bonte Junction. In effect, what ended up happening is that the design got changed and it didn't really become a box park, although people still continue to call it that. But it now has a brand new name, this retail facility, which was built on the site formerly known as the St. Lucia Marketing Board. And in fact, from a ownership and management perspective, I believe it still is going to be run by the St. Lucia Marketing Board, which has some retail store within that facility as well. But certainly in terms of the ambience and thankfully, finally, hoarding coming down, the hoarding's down, and now you can actually enjoy a nicer facade and some, nicer pavements, and of course, a space which can then lend itself to, different types of leisure and entertainment, and the opportunity for individuals to sell products, food and beverage, as well as, of course, showcasing a lot of the entrepreneurs who are developing, different products. So it is certainly a welcome shift into a city that certainly needs a lot of upliftment, that of the city of Castries. And, quite often people um, see old photos of Castries, and they lament that, look at this and look at how Castries looked before the 1948 fire. How did it appear? And what tends to catch people's eyes quite often, I suspect, would be the roofscape, and the roofs of character that certainly were present in a number of these buildings in that period of time, whether it's the curved mansard roofs or the gable roofs, and that caused certainly a level of interest in terms of the person visualizing the city. And so quite often those things these days are put aside in terms of functionality, and we see lots of flat roofs, and there are benefits to having some flat roofs in some instances. Maybe if in the case of trying to get rainwater harvesting, or if you want to install solar PV on rooftops, definitely it tends to be a little easier in that regard. And that's what we're seeing a lot more now of across the city. But certainly the importance of putting up structures that have character is something that we have to perhaps as a society have a conversation on. It's not to say that you got to live in the past, but at the same time, there are things in the past that should not just simply be thrown away because of the idea, well, that's somehow in old fashioned or something. And so we've seen in many, many parts of the world how countries have looked at their architectural heritage and have not just conserved the original buildings, not just restore the original buildings, but even when there is new construction, that new construction follows a particular design style that is in consonance with the space that those buildings are being built in. And I know the challenge, of course, in Castries is that, with the 1948 fire, at the time it happened, coming out into the 1950s, there was a drive towards a lot of modernism, and one could say also minimalism in how buildings were actually developed. And so you did not see a lot of the character elements in terms of the roof design or in terms of the fretwork or the treatment of the windows, having those things that made the buildings very attractive and interesting. And so a lot of that seems to have gone out the door. And let's just face it, when we look at the attractions that we speak of in the city of Castries as we have it right now, most of them were actually built up in a certain time, interesting enough, right? And that is in the period of the 1890s, principally, especially the Castries Market, the Cathedral Basilica on the square, Government House. Those were all built around that same period of time. Some a little older, like the Anglican Trinity Church, which was built in the 1830s, and some a little later, like that of the Carnegie Library, also on the Derek Walcott Square. And those tend to be what we boast as attractions, right? In the city center. So we certainly have to think about that in terms of the look and feel of a place. Because guess what? What we always our former tagline was St. Lucia simply beautiful. And it certainly is not and should not be just about the natural landscape being beautiful, but also the built landscape, the built environment also needs to have some sense of beauty as well. Now, that's our dish of the day. So when we come back, we will take in our weather report.
And also, of course, on 1.1, it's now time for your weather report as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Talent Bath. The forecast for St. Lucia Valley for the next 24 hours, the winds will be blowing from the east, southeast near 14 miles per hour or 22 kilometers per hour, becoming lighter at times. The weather affected by the cloudy skies with a few isolated showers. The forecast for the Los Antilles, fair skies becoming cloudy at times with a few light showers, mainly over the northern portion of the Lesser Antilles. And the weather summary, light to moderate east-southeasterly winds will persist over the eastern Caribbean region during the next couple of days. Generally stable conditions are expected across the region during the next 24 hours. However, a few localized showers may develop over some of the islands from time to time. And this was your weather forecast as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Talent Bath.
And welcome back to the lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. Of course, it's about 20 minutes to go before the hour of 2 o'clock. And if you want to call in to tell us what's on your plate today, the number to do so is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. I think we should go to the phone lines at this time. We had a call coming in. Yes, okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the lunchroom.
Good afternoon, Mr. George.
How are you doing, caller?
Not too bad.
Wonderful.
Why, for what reason they will want Trinidadian to have visa to visit the United Kingdom?
The explanation that was given by the High Commissioner for the UK to Trinidad was, I think, the issue of asylum seekers. They said that there was a very high rate of individuals applying for asylum, right, in the United Kingdom, coming from Trinidad.
From Trinidad?
Yes. So they were suggesting that, it's extraordinarily high. And so it then meant that they decided to go the route of placing those.
But to me, that is the same route of Donald Trump.
Well, countries have
everything waking up now.
Countries,
they were sleeping and everything waking up.
I think it's maybe a little different because it did not, as far as I know, I don't know if it came with a whole list of countries, but it seemed to have been in this instance just a situation with Trinidad and Tobago. Now there may have been other countries that have now required visas for entry, but remember, all countries have had visa policies. What what Donald Trump is actually suggesting is a travel ban, right? So that he's saying that basically anybody from a particular country, they will not be allowed to come to the United States at all, right? Which is different from the United States, from the UK. UK is saying, hey, you will now require a visa to be able to come, right? Which is what obtains for most, the United States of America, for example, most countries require visas to go to the US. It is a small select group of developed world countries that are exempted.
Yes.
So in the case of the UK, in the past, it normally used to, afford, especially for its Commonwealth member countries, an opportunity to be able to not have a visa, right? That, of course, has not applied for all Commonwealth members, because I think in most instances from the start, I think India and Pakistan, the very, very large ones, did require visas for entry. So I think what is interesting in terms of Trinidad is that, it's enjoyed for a very long time, um, an open opportunity to come to the UK, to go to the UK, I should say.
But not Trinidad only. Most of the Commonwealth.
And
Let's say that Commonwealth.
most islands in the Caribbean, yes, have enjoyed that. I think Jamaica has been requiring visas. Well, the UK has required of Jamaica visas for some time.
Mm.
Yeah, but in this now instance,
Yeah, but a
Trinidad being
lot
added to the
of
list.
Jamaican carry two passports. They carry the Jamaican passport and they carry the United Kingdom passport. Most Jamaican that travel.
Well, that's if they have a UK passport, if they have some connection
Well,
to the UK. But
I
the
don't
vast
know the
majority
right
of
amount, but
Jamaicans don't.
they probably would have 1 million Jamaican in the United
And
Kingdom.
quite possibly so. Quite possibly so.
Or it could be
But
more.
the thing about it is that it still is, for the majority of the 3 million or 2.9 million Jamaicans living in Jamaica, they don't have UK citizenship. They've got to get visas. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that has generally been the case. I mean, I was just looking at the list in the case of the UK. They the year ending September 2024, they granted 2.13 million visas. And then as well, I think that included, oh no, that's separate. Those are visitor visas, but also 444,000 study visas, 453,000 work visas, 87,000 family visas. And there's also what is known as the safe and legal humanitarian routes. So I guess, excuse me, people who are coming in on humanitarian grounds because of war or some challenge in those countries.
Well, saying one, say the other. Is those English tourists would want a visa to visit St. Lucia or Trinidad?
Well, that is up to the government of Trinidad and Tobago and St. Lucia. I mean, Trinidad and Tobago could decide that they were going to apply reciprocity towards UK travelers. However, particularly in the case of Tobago, where they depend on tourism, right? That might,
like St. Lucia.
Right. So that might not necessarily hold. And so in the case of St. Lucia, where we even more dependent on tourism compared to Trinidad and Tobago, I would suspect that might not be how we may want to go in that regard. I mean, the UK has traditionally been our second largest market for visitors, and adding a visa requirement would perhaps quite possibly make it a lot more difficult for people and might, in fact, deter persons from coming. Generally speaking, visas tend to be deterrents because it's it takes time, it's a cost usually involved. And so then we'd have to decide whether, and normally visas are a place where there's some kind of security risk, right? And countries that want to control their borders, they may want that opportunity to vet who is coming in.
Okay, we leave one and we take the other.
Yes.
The Peter William Boulevard.
Yes.
I don't see nothing really wrong with Peter William Boulevard. It's just only the people that used to sell on the pavement, right? And now they're moving them from Peter William Boulevard. I see some by the square and but to me, that's a well-designed place.
Well, I think the thinking there is that it, instead of having it as, when it was designed after the fire in 48, it was designed to accommodate vehicles, and it was supposed to be seen.
Everything that done in Castries there. I was there. I was
Right.
there.
So the
Yeah.
thinking at the time, albeit, I should also mention that the amount of traffic coming into Castries in 1948, based on the report that was prepared by the architects, they did a traffic count, and I think there were about 53 vehicles coming in and out of Castries in 1948. Today, that number obviously is closer to probably about 30,000 vehicles coming into Castries on a daily basis, right? So the times have changed considerably. But the idea is that in your downtown, you actually want to create a more pedestrian friendly environment, right? So you create these malls, in other words, these shopping, or as the English say, malls, if you want, right? And the idea is that it creates a friendly environment for people to be able to sit down. You can have it's a more walkable area, right?
Yeah, well,
so in a lot of
we can put a little bit more seat in Constitution Park, but Constitution Park cover the Peter William Boulevard.
But in the UK, you see a lot of that. In Europe, you see a lot of the high streets, right? In many areas, in many towns, they're locked off from traffic, right? So they're only pedestrians. People can walk freely.
Well, most
Even
Europe, people dying outside on the pavement in Paris.
Exactly. In fact, right now there was this whole push to the principal axis of Paris, the Champs-Élysées, right? Which is a massive, broad street, which was built by in part by Napoleon III. And by Haussmann, and
but yet still
that was
the Champs-Élysées is well packed during the day,
right?
That's a place, although you find where you can sit down and have an ice cream, have a soft drink, but it has to be well packed.
Right now, and what I'm saying is that it has a lot of pedestrian space on the sides, right? And it has lots of trees, and but in the center of it is actually a you could call it a highway almost, a broad avenue, a boulevard
up and down there
with many lanes. And even in that major route, they're actually talking about how to reduce on the number of lanes of traffic.
In a way, Mr. George, you have to take something down to put something up. We don't have place, the kind of place. Most of the time I look at it, I say, if you have to put a building, I look everywhere where a building can go up. And there's no room.
Yeah, well, and that comes to another issue as to how you plan
the other thing you
what
talk
you put
about,
where.
Flat roof. That's the worst thing you can do when you put in building up to go flat roof. Because it's concrete you put, and then tarmac goes on top of the concrete. But when the sun is very hot, it split the tarmac. And then water will slip when you get the rainy season, and those building is no good.
You do have issues
when they build.
If they're not well sealed. You're very correct.
They build a lot of flat roof, big buildings, skyscrapers, flat roof, and inside it, wet water coming down.
Yeah.
And they had to go back to gable roof, and they don't do nothing. Just put the gable roof and gutter in, and they rescue a lot of the building like that.
Yeah,
so that's why
and right here in
Castries, talking about building,
Castries
Comprehensive, I tell them I could give them a tip to save Castries Comprehensive. Nothing wrong with the building. Just put gable roof on top. You leave it just like that, and they put the gable roof.
I actually think they did that on one section of the building in the Castries Comprehensive.
Well, I did give them the advice. I didn't charge nothing for it.
But yes, you're right. There are those complications, of course, if you're not sealing the top properly. And even when you seal it over time, it deteriorates depending on the type of material that you use.
Anyway, Mr. George, I give somebody a chance.
All right, then, caller. Thanks very much for that contribution. And of course, the number to call in is 452-3046, and you can also reach us at 724-0008. Again, 724-0008. But coming back to the point regarding pedestrianization, yeah, a lot of cities have gone that route, and usually, there is at least one street where, and sometimes a network of streets where you actually are locking off an area, your shopping area, to be solely for pedestrian use. And so that effectively the entire area becomes kind of like a big mall, if you like. Let's take another call. Good afternoon and welcome to the lunchroom. What's on your plate today?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Fantastic. I sent a message in WhatsApp about youth employment, and just to say it's just an idea about in the UK. I'm calling from the UK. We have the apprenticeship scheme where young people are employed for. Well, I think I missed the connection.
Hello. Yes, we're hearing you. You were talking about an apprenticeship scheme.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I can see that the St. Lucia's cruise ship schedule lasts from essentially October through to the end of April.
Yes.
So that's a 6 months period. I can't see why St. Lucia can't employ or launch an apprenticeship scheme for young people to cover the cruise ship period where they can get valuable skills and employment at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know? I mean, it sounds in practice something that can be implemented. I'm just wondering whether or not it's something in theory that could happen, because you've got a sustained 6 month period of time where young people could be in employment, out of crime, off the streets,
Mm-hmm.
and doing, earning money, learning skills, and hopefully, once the cruise ship season ends, they can move to other areas or other countries, other islands where the cruise ship season continues, and get employment opportunities.
Right. I think there've been initiatives, and in particular right now, there's actually a focus on technical and vocational education, training.
Mm-hmm.
And through that TVET Council, I think they've been trying to push towards doing similar to what you're talking about. So they've established, I think, these four TVET centers around the island, with the aim of incorporating in the curriculum, or as part of the curriculum, training as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, I think, heading in that direction now. You also see sometimes maybe a few hotels take on, offer some training
Young people.
options for young persons as well. So we've been seeing a number of them. Some have happened in the past, but perhaps the challenge is that it's never enough. And the other challenge I should also point out is that we seem to be having a tremendous gender gap in terms of who is actually taking on some of these programs. So you sometimes have these training options being afforded. Sometimes they're funded through grants, like the Taiwanese, for example, did one not too long ago. And
Yes.
And I think about 80% of the persons who are participating, you'll find, are females. So
you can put in place positive discrimination, and you can, and then you can put positive discrimination. I don't want to use word discrimination, but you can put a call out that you're looking for a higher percentage of male candidates.
Right.
But I think that the long and the short, Calix, is really you've got a 6 months period in the calendar where some people, and I know you say it's never enough, and it never will be enough. But that doesn't deny people the opportunity. And I think if a fixed amount of people, for instance, whether it be hundreds or thousands, know that they have an opportunity, if it's a toss of a coin between having no work for 6 months and having some work for 6 months and over a sustained period, they'll probably take the latter of the option, because it means they will be employed. That may lead to employment opportunities further afield. I think the government, it's something that they should looking. And I know you always talk about investment, and I understand investment, but if you look at cruise ships, if they're investing in the island, and it means the caliber of people that gets employed, level of service is improved, it's a win-win situation. Surely it's just a suggestion, as I say.
No, and it's a very well taken suggestion. Definitely, I think you're very much on point. I think part of the challenge too is that you have programs, but then sometimes I don't think that it's actually quantified. So I mean, there's programs that, let's say, so Arthur Lewis Community College does, and the National Skills Development Center, NSDC, they're doing some programs. The TVET Council, they're doing programs. But to say that it's actually coordinated, and I think that's perhaps where there's a need for some coordination to see, well, what is the actual impact of this? Are we capturing, the people who really need this the most? Because that's the other thing too.
Yes.
Sometimes you have the motivated people are the ones who are going out and who are making best use of it. But then there are too many situations where we have people who, let's say, have fallen through the cracks, and nobody is picking them up through those cracks to try to bring them up. So
I understand that completely. But I think if you look at it in the main, you've got a season that happens year in, year out. I mean, COVID aside, but year in, year out. So there's opportunities there year in, year out for sustained employment for people. And I think you're right. Coordination and maybe, some joined up thinking needs to happen. But it could happen. It could happen, because I think to give a young person an opportunity to be employed for half of the year is better than not giving them an opportunity at all, which is the situation that we we face right now. That the opportunities are not there, so therefore there are alternatives to employment that young people take up, such as making quick money through illegal ways. It's to invest in, because the future is the young people. You mentioned 185,000 people, which is a growing number. The last time I counted, it was 180. So I don't know where the extra 5,000 people have come. But no doubt there are older people that are looking for employment. There are younger people looking for employment. So more aid, and the open opportunities has to be made in the visitor sector, because that's where that's where our bread and butter comes from.
Right, definitely. Thanks for that contribution, caller. Very much on point. And have a good one. Looks like we may have lost.
Some more.
Okay, we're having some issues with that caller, unfortunately. But point very, very well taken, though, regarding trying to leverage more the tourism sector in terms of a sustained approach in that regard. In terms of, now, of course, the other side of it is that we do have quite a number of St. Lucians who actually have sought out employment through those cruise ships and through those cruise lines, through agencies, the Springboards and the Mampas, who've actually come on board to do the training and to create those ways for those individuals to get on. What we've seen, though, as a challenge on that side, on the flip side of it, of course, is that these individuals inevitably have to spend 6 months out of the island. And that sometimes faces, challenges in terms of social care for children and that sort of thing. So, and even when we have jobs on island in relation to tourism, the late night hours and all that sometimes has also has come with its own challenges in terms of childcare. So we definitely have to look at how that issue of youth unemployment can be tackled. And perhaps I think it's a good step if it is in fact being institutionalized through the schools, right? That's a very important aspect that is important. And so that the whole TVET thrust, which would then allow for individuals to get practical training. So they're not just getting their CXCs, but they're also getting their CVQs, right, which is the vocational qualifications, through the actual hands-on practical training, is certainly where there's a significant thrust in that regard. Perhaps we should try to maybe invite someone from the TVET Council. I know they're doing quite a bit in terms of thrust towards trying to create some of these types of programs. So definitely very much on point. Although I suspect that the challenge that we're going to find ourselves is, though, it's one thing to offer somebody an opportunity, but it has to be maybe for them that they want it to be attractive enough, and it still is that challenge, though, whether there should be maybe more than just a stipend, perhaps, to be able to care for their needs. So that's our program for today, and we do hope that you can join us again tomorrow, Thursday, for another one. There's quite a lot to take in every day, but we're trying to pack it all in as best we can. So have a good one. Take care.